Good evening and welcome to our session. We're just going to streaming in slowly, and then we'll kick off our webinar. But as you come in, just grab a nice, comfortable place to sit. Grab your water because it's going to be a very interesting 2 hours. So as you come in, you'll see in the chat that we have a question. Please introduce yourself. Let us know your name, where you're joining us from, and what you do. We'd love to know who is joining us today. Okay, I see the first person is Charmaine. Welcome, Charmaine, from South Africa. Someone is joining, Sandra from Norway. Yeah, welcome, everyone. Wow, it's great to see the energy here. Welcome, everyone. Oh, we have people from across the world. Interesting. I see Sheila from Vancouver. Seema from Sweden. Hi, Nat from South Africa. Hello, Amar from Cameroon. Evelyn. Okay, I think we have enough people in the chat. We can kickstart so that we don't delay our program. Yeah, so good evening, everyone, and welcome. Happy International Women's Month, and welcome to Greenpeace Africa's International Women's Day 2025 webinar. My name is Sherie Gaki, Communications Manager at Greenpeace Africa, and your host for this evening's event. So thank you so much for joining us as we come together to honor the transformative power of women's leadership in our fight for climate justice. As some of you may know, the International Women's Day theme this year is Accelerate Action. It's a call for urgent, bold, and innovative responses to the climate challenges that we face. This particular event is titled Women at the Forefront of Climate Leadership, as you will come to meet the women who we are engaging in this webinar, with a focus on transforming climate challenges into opportunities. So it will highlight inspiring a brilliant panel, groundbreaking ideas, and actionable solutions that are shaping our future and our world. So over the next 2 hours, we will guide you through a series of engaging sessions, starting with a brief mindfulness session, followed by a keynote address, a dynamic panel discussion with our leading experts, and an interactive Q&A, question and answer session. We'll then close with another mindfulness session, and finally, we'll wrap our webinar. So just a few housekeeping rules. On the chat box, tell us your name, what you do, which part of the world you're joining us from. We also have the Q&A box. You'll see it down there. Please key in all your questions for the panel in that box. We highly encourage you to use that Q&A box so that we don't miss seeing your question. To also save on time, we will primarily focus on getting our questions from the Q&A box as opposed to having our mics on. So yeah, let's get comfortable, a comfortable place to sit and be ready to fully engage for the next 2 hours. Okay, so before we dive into tonight's discussion, for some of us it's already nighttime, I invite you all to take a few moments for a guided mindfulness session. This session is designed to help us release the stresses of the day. Most of us are coming from work or have had a long work week. You know, it's Thursday, it's pre-Friday. So we know people are getting to that point, if you know what I mean. And more so as we continue to face anxieties that come with the climate challenges that we are constantly facing. So please find a comfortable place to sit and allow our facilitator, who's psychologist Elizabeth Kasuja from Uganda, to lead us in a brief meditation. According to Elizabeth, and I just saw her post this afternoon, she said women's well-being is not a luxury. And I think this goes for all, because I know we also have men on the chat. Well-being is not a luxury, it's a necessity. So let's take these moments to center ourselves and prepare to engage with passion and clarity. Over to you.
How lovely. Thank you so much, Sherie. Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you. As Sherie has said, my name is Elizabeth Kasuja. I'm a clinical psychologist from Uganda, and well-being is not a luxury. Women's well-being, because it's International Women's Day, women's well-being is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And before we dive into this mindfulness session, I want to first take a moment to recognize something really important. The work of climate justice is really urgent. It is necessary and it's deeply emotional. Many of us carry the weight of this fight every single day, the responsibilities, the setbacks you face in your work, the constant need to push forward. All these things can take a toll, looking for funding and, wanting to make a difference in your community. All these things take a toll. And if you are here for this webinar today and you've ever felt overwhelmed, exhausted, or even helpless and hopeless sometimes, I want you to know that you are not alone. The climate anxiety many of us are experiencing right now is real, and us acknowledging it is the first step to managing it. So today I want to share some seemingly simple exercises that really work to help you whenever you feel too nervous or too stressed or too anxious, or when you feel like you are carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, okay? So first, I'm going to guide us to breathe, okay? You can close your eyes for this activity if you want. You can keep them wide open. Just relax into your chair. Feel your bottom really touching the chair or the couch or the bed or the ground, wherever you're sitting. Take a deep breath in, and when I count to 5, you can release it, and then we'll do that again, okay? So we are going to take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. Breathe out heavily. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are going to breathe in again. Breathe in. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. Let it go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This time, as you breathe in, I want you to imagine yourself inhaling all the goodness in the world: peace, love, joy, kindness. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you can exhale all the injustices, all the sadness, all the fatigue, all the exhaustion. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And I want you to shake your body, shake your arms out, shake your arms out, shake your legs out. Dance, move your waist. Okay. So now I'd like to take us to a grounding exercise. We call it the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I hope we are all feeling a bit more relaxed and we have left the stresses of the day behind. So I think it's really important to share with you that one of the most effective ways we as clinical psychologists, one of the most effective ways we use to ease anxiety within the moment is to bring ourselves and the client back to the present, okay? So we are now going to do a simple grounding exercise together. And if you are comfortable with this, you can post your responses in the chat. If you are not, you can just keep doing whatever prompts we say and, just enjoy it for yourself. So right now, you're going to look around wherever you find yourself during this webinar. Look around you and notice 5 things that your mind had ignored before. Just 5 things. Our mind has a tendency of pushing things to the back of our minds if they are not posing any danger. So just notice 5 things that you had missed before. Okay? And then touch 4 things that you can reach with your hands where you are now and observe their texture. Oh, sorry. Is that better now? I hope so. Okay. Next, please listen for 3 sounds within your environment that you had probably missed before. Just 3 sounds. And then using your nose, breathe in deep and observe 2 scents that you had missed before. What do you smell when you breathe in? And last but not least, feel your tongue. What is the one thing you can taste right now? So this technique always helps us shift our focus from whatever chaos might be going on in our minds and brings us back to the reality in front of us. So in moments of overwhelm, I think it's a really powerful way to regain your clarity and become calm again. So if ever you're out there in the community doing the amazing work that you do, or you're on a stage somewhere, or you're feeling pressured or just overwhelmed, or you just feel your heart pumping a little bit too fast, just do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Think of your 5 senses and go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and bring yourself back into the present moment. Because much as climate anxiety is real, so is our power as women in climate, okay, let me not exclude the gentlemen, as ladies and gentlemen in climate. Our power is also very real. It's even more real than the climate anxiety. So when we allow ourselves to shift our focus from fear to action, we then remind ourselves that we are not just victims of the climate crisis. Rather, we are part of the solution. And I know the amazing people here, women all across Africa, are leading change every day. And I want you to know, if you are attending this webinar, you are important. Your voice, your actions, and your presence here really matter. So let us take a moment to anchor this truth within us so that we can take it with us as we go through today's sessions. I invite you to say this after me. I am part of a movement that brings change. My voice and my actions matter. Okay, so we are going to take a deep breath in, hold, and big breath out. I hope we carry this with us as we move through today's wonderful conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that calming and grounding session. I hope for all of you, it calmed you as much as it calmed me. I think that was the best way to just start this session. I want us to shift gears now And let's take a moment to reflect on the meaning of accelerate action. Remember, I said earlier that accelerate action is our theme for the International Women's Day in 2025. This year, we are all about accelerate action. I don't know about you, but this theme challenges me to not only want to respond to the climate crisis urgently, but to also think about about transforming the obstacles we face on the daily into opportunities for growth, for resilience, and for lasting change. It's my distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker, a visionary leader whose work has been pivotal in advancing climate justice and sustainable development across our continent. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Dr. Uli Keita, Executive Director of Greenpeace Africa. Dr. Uli Keita is an international development expert with 22 years of experience and expertise in policy, advocacy, and campaign on issues related to the protection of the environment, development, peace, and security. Dr. Uli holds a PhD in peace governance professional career. Dr. Keita has been active in various capacities with a focus on women and youth in the protection of environment, development, and peace building, conducting advocacy, campaign, and direct lobby engagements, addressing high-level panels such as United Nations Security Council, the African Union Commission, the World Bank Group, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations General Assembly, as well as heads of state and ministers. Dr. Uli, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sherie, for that great introduction. And thanks, Elizabeth, for the mindfulness session. It really woke me up. Thank you all. Good evening, good afternoon. All protocols duly observed. Thank you for joining us in this wonderful day of celebration, reflection, and bold action on International Women's Day 2025. Tonight, we gather under our resounding theme, Accelerate Action, a call that is as urgent as it is inspiring. So across Africa, our environment is evolving in ways that test our resilience and demand innovation. From harsh droughts, sudden floods, and drastic shifts in our ecosystems. In the midst of these changes, however, we witness a remarkable transformation. African women are just not surviving these trials, they're leading a revolution. They are turning setbacks into breakthroughs, and in doing so, they're charting a course towards a more sustainable and just future. I stand here before you as the ED of Greenpeace Africa, deeply moved by the power of women leadership. Throughout my journey, I've seen how ordinary challenges have sparkled extraordinary innovations. I've witnessed grassroots organizations revitalize communities, witness renewable energy projects emerge in places one left in darkness, and seen fearless leaders drive bold policy shifts, all done by African women. I've had my fair share of adversities and challenges as a woman leader, and I continue to do so. But I've learned that adversity is not just an obstacle. It's a catalyst that, when met with resilience and reflection, it actually transforms challenges into opportunities for growth and self-discovery. Our stories are not isolated as African women. They're the living testament to the spirit of creativity, resilience that defines the spirit of all women across the world. One story that continues to inspire me is that of Fatou Samba. Fatou Samba is a fish processor from Senegal. Fatou has been once, enjoying the vibrant ocean, a vital source of livelihood for her and her family. Now that fell under the weight of overfishing and unsustainable practices. These inhuman practices deprived Fatu and her children from food security and exposed her to serious health issues. Food is taken away from Fatu's children to feed animals in Europe. How inhuman is that? How do our governments allow such things to happen? Yet, Fatu refused to be a bystander. Along with a group of determined women, she has ignited a campaign to confront this crisis. Her courage reminds me of the everyday battles we fight within our own communities at Greenpeace Africa, where every single small victory builds a larger legacy for change. Our work at Greenpeace Africa is enriched by so many trailblazers every day. Just to name a few, take our food campaigner, Elizabeth Atieno. Elizabeth is pushing back on punitive laws that are stifling our farmers and restricting their freedom to grow their own food in Kenya. Our climate and energy campaigner, Cynthia, who's one of the speakers, is pushing for renewable energy that promises a cleaner, sustainable future in South Africa. Our oil and gas campaigner, Sherie, is fighting the neo-colonial exploitation of our natural resources. Our plastic campaign lead, Helen Kahaso, she's spearheading efforts to an ambitious global plastic treaty that promises plastic production cuts to at least 75% by 2040. Our creative partnership manager, Natania, is mobilizing influencers across the continent to give visibility to our campaigns, along with Mary Grace, building strategic partnership with like-minded organizations. Our volunteer coordinator, Hallam, doing amazing work mobilizing volunteers all over South Africa. Rose in Kenya, leading the continental youth movement on climate justice. Ines Nuria, an engaged woman bringing the whole Francophone Africa to support Greenpeace Africa. Stella, campaigning to protect indigenous communities in Cameroon. Amrita, Tracy, Joanne, turning our campaigns into amazing digital content for the masses. Nelly, leading our digital transformation agenda. Charlotte, Diana, Lugada, Yolanda, ensuring that our ops are supporting teams to enable efficiency. Diana Waters, courageously training and organizing our NVDAs. Carol Jabu, Dolores Audris, tirelessly engaging with donors and supporters to raise funds for Greenpeace Africa. Christine Tamara, ensuring finances are properly utilized. Diana, monitoring and documenting our impact. Our brilliant comms people, Luchelle and the brilliant Sherie that we have with us on this panel, communicating effectively to our stakeholders. Doreen engaging the African Union for Africa to have a voice at the African Union and not be on the menu. Esther, Isa, to our regional coordinators, all brilliant women representing us in their regions. And last but not last, our female directors in SMT, Anastasia, Fadima, and Alice, providing the necessary support for us to lead effectively. The list is long, but it's important for me to recognize the leaders, the women leaders in Greenpeace Africa who are working every single day in their own rights to promote human rights, to promote women's rights, to make sure that women leaders have a voice in the climate justice movement in Africa. The actions of these brave and fearless women in Greenpeace Africa, along with those countless women on the front lines across the continent, exemplify how diversity can be harnessed into opportunities. Yet, despite all these powerful actions and movements by millions of women on the continent, the journey to gender equity remains long. According to research, gender parity could take over a century, which is not at all acceptable because our climate crisis requires immediate and decisive action. And at its core lies the indispensable strength of women's leadership. We must shift our perspective. Our adversity is not an insurmountable barrier. It is the spark for creativity and transformation. Through policy reform, through digital innovation, community-driven activities, we can convert climate challenges into catalysts for growth and resilience. When women lead these transformations, they not only drive change, they redefine what's possible. At Greenpeace Africa, we are committed to a future where women are central to the climate justice movement, building and sustainable development for all communities. So tonight, I call on every one of you, policymakers, advocacy people, lobbyists, community leaders, citizens all over to join Greenpeace Africa in accelerating action to support women at the forefront of climate leadership and transform climate challenges into opportunities. Thank you. Over to you, Sherie.
Wow, what an incredible, powerful speech, Uli. I feel like I almost got a tear out as you were speaking. Thank you so much on behalf also of Greenpeace Africa. We really appreciate the shout out. So, wow. I mean, it's hard coming after that. Thank you so much, Dr. Uli. Now, I'm delighted to introduce our distinguished panelists who will share their unique perspectives on how women are transforming climate challenges into opportunities. Let me briefly introduce each panel, starting with Priscilla Chomba. Priscilla is the Chief Technology Officer at Greenpeace International and is responsible for providing leadership for the development and realization of the organization's digital transformation strategy and visualizing how technology can be used responsibly to increase internal efficiency and external impact in a rapidly transforming environment, particularly in light of the climate crisis. She's a digital transformation strategist and an ICT for development expert with experience in technology and innovation spanning 20 years in Africa, Asia, Americas, Europe, the Middle East, and the Pacific. Prior to joining Greenpeace International, Priscilla worked in both emergency and development contexts with various organizations, including UNICEF, the UN World Food Programme, Danish Church Aid, and Action Aid International. Priscilla, maybe you may just say hi so that we see your face.
Hi, everyone. So lovely to be here, and thank you for being with us. This is amazing. Thank you, Sherie.
Thanks, Priscilla. Our next panelist is Nontle Mbutuma, founder of the Amadiba Crisis Committee. Nontle is a courageous and passionate community leader from the Wild Coast area of the Eastern Cape in South Africa. Nontle founded a local organization along South Africa's Wild Coast to fight a proposed strip mine 17 years ago. Despite ongoing personal threats, she's still working to protect her community from oil exploration and other potentially harmful developments. Nontle fights for land and environmental rights in South Africa's Eastern Cape. In 2007, Nontle founded the Amadiba Crisis Committee, that's the ACC, to unite community members in 5 villages of the Amadiba Tribal Authority region to work together in opposition to destructive mining projects. She is now the most visible leader of the campaign against the Australian corporation Mineral Commodities Limited. That's the MRC. Nontle can just say a quick hi to us.
Hi, thank you so much, Greenpeace, for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nontle. Our next panelist is Cynthia Moyo. She's the climate and energy campaign lead here at Greenpeace Africa. I'm sure you had her mentioned earlier. Cynthia is a prominent environmental warrior and activist. She's the climate and energy campaign lead at Greenpeace Africa. She has been a key figure in efforts to promote environmental justice, climate action, transition to renewable energy, and sustainable development in Africa. Here are some of Cynthia's for climate justice, pushing for African governments and international organizations to take action to address the climate crisis with recent campaigns against Corobric and Shell in the Wild Coast case. The second focus area is energy access. She has worked to promote access to renewable energy for African communities, advocating for a transition away from fossil fuels. The third focus area is environmental activism. Cynthia has been involved in various environmental and anti-coal initiatives. And last but not least, women's empowerment. Cynthia is a strong advocate for women's empowerment and has worked to promote gender equality in environmental decision-making spaces. Cynthia, maybe you can just give us a quick hello.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Cynthia. Our next panelist is Dr. Susan Chomba. You'll notice she shares a last name with Priscilla. Dr. Susan is the Director of Vital Landscapes at the World Resources Institute, that's WRI. She leads WRI Africa's work on forest protection and landscape restoration, food systems transformation, and water. She's a scientist with extensive research and development experience on the continent for more than 15 years. Susan is a member of the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems and Champions for Climate Action. She serves on advisory boards of being named as one of Global Landscape Forum's 16 women restoring the earth in 2021, one of the top 25 women shaping climate action by Greenpeace in 2022, as well as BBC 100 Women in 2023. Susan, please say a quick hello to us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Greenpeace, for having me. And thank you so much, Sherie, for the incredible introduction. Very side.
Thank you, Susan, for joining us. Last and certainly not least, we have Jennifer Olachi Uchendu, founder of Sasti Vibes. Jennifer is a founder of Sasti Vibes, a youth-led organization advancing sustainability, advocacy, and implementation across Africa. Her recent work explores the intersection of climate change and mental health, focusing on research, advocacy, and community-driven support systems for Africans. Jennifer holds a master's in development studies from the Institute of Development Studies in the UK, the Sherie Institute. In 2023, she was named to the BBC 100 Women list for her groundbreaking work at the intersection of climate change and mental health. So this is the second person we had named in the BBC Top 100 Women in 2023. Welcome, Jennifer. Please say a quick hello to us.
Thank you, Sherie. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to hearing from everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, to our audience and participants, please join me in welcoming our panelists. Give them a silent clap. We may not hear it, but we will feel it. Okay, so let's begin our panel discussion with these incredible women at the forefront and speak about how they are transforming climate challenges into opportunities. I'll start with relatable to young Africans. My first question to you this evening, how do we cultivate a generation of young female climate leaders and just generally young climate leaders who see opportunities rather than barriers in this space?
Thank you so much. That is such a good question. And as a young female climate leader myself, I think it's very pertinent to contribute to a question like this. I guess the first place is to start from our position and our context. So who are we to these young women or to young female climate leaders? Are we employees or CSO leaders or policymakers who are making this decision? I think that's also very important in terms of what your power is, what you can do, and how you contribute. From my experience, it's been allowing people to experiment and fail forward. Susty Vibes, it's a brilliant example of what it means when you allow a young person try things out. I started Susty Vibes as a blog. It was just a WordPress blog where I was writing a lot about my interest in climate change sustainability from a young African's point of view. And now we've grown into this massive organization, doing incredible work in Africa. I think it's also really important that access is enabled, particularly for older, more experienced women and experts who work in this space. Allow access, allow mentorship, and continue to encourage young people. I think it's also important to think about what the barriers that we face as young people doing this work. So access to funding, tokenism, adultism, silencing of our voice, toxic working conditions, unfavorable local policies, all of these are valid, but they're also invitations for us to be creative and resilient. In my work at Susty Vibes, I have seen passionate 18-year-olds, hone their passion and become, positions such as our head of projects, for example. I've also seen in my own life what it means and what happens when people take a chance on, young women. So I think these barriers in the space are valid, but they are also, opportunities and offerings for us to challenge ourselves and work together to bring something really, really viable from, the continent. Thank you.
Jennifer, I'll move over to Dr. Susan Chomba. Yesterday, thanks to social media, I saw Dr. Susan speaking at a WRI event. I know she doesn't know this. And she posed a very vital question to the audience. She asked, if you could pluck money from trees, how many trees would you plant? If you could pluck money from trees, how many trees would you plant? That question is still lingering in my mind, and it made me wonder how different would we act if we had money trees and forests. So Dr. Susan, you work at the intersection of landscape restoration, food systems, and climate resilience. First of all, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what role women play in leading these critical areas and what challenges do they continue to face? And also you can touch a bit more on, how do we turn these challenges into opportunities?
Fantastic, Sherie. So the food systems and the nature space is quite diverse, and women can play different kinds of roles. I started off myself as a scientist, and as a scientist, you're supposed to research what are the impacts of climate change on food systems, what's the impact of unsustainable food systems on nature and climate. And that part is still a very, very big part of me. Those who might be in the audience who are researchers know that it's a very difficult space to get critical mass of women, and especially African women who are leading research in these particular areas. And I think it's upon us, those whose doors have already been opened, to create opportunities for other young African women to become scientists, to become leaders in defining both the challenges as well as the solutions for climate, for food systems, for nature, and for climate. Practical solutions that you can do around that if you're a leading woman scientist is, of course, the first one is mentorship. We were all mentored. We all had people who are holding us. We all had people who believed in us, who said, I see you and I know you have huge potential. They helped us apply, those who needed scholarships. They helped us craft the research questions. They helped us navigate the whole system from master's to PhD. And the least that we can do is to basically give it forward, is to be able to share with other young Africans, African women who are coming into that space. The other element of the work that I do that you saw, Sherie, thank you so much for that shout out, is obviously on the action space. space. I know research is important, but for Africa, we also need a lot of action. And for climate change, we need action urgently and now. And so, driving finance to institutions, local organizations, and especially women-led organizations. The people that I was speaking to yesterday are community groups, a lot of women groups who had traveled from far, whom we've worked with for many years, looking at solutions around food systems, agroecology. Today, I'm in Machakos with Alliance for Food System Sovereignty in Africa, looking at solutions for sustainable food systems. And every time I'm looking, I'm asking how many women are in this room? How many women are actually heard? Their voices are being heard. And how can we translate that into policies that are being able to support women? So the implementation, whether it's driving finance, whether it's driving policy, whether it's empowering women into spaces and their voices being heard, is absolutely crucial.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that, Susan, and just tying it to communities and, touch on policy, and we'll come back to that a bit later. Right now, I want to head over to Cynthia. Cynthia, the transition to renewable energy is a critical climate solution, but often underrepresented in decision-making roles, especially in the energy sector. What needs to change to ensure women lead in shaping Africa's energy future?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Moderator Sherie, for that interesting question. And allow me to, start off by really acknowledging the incredible women leaders that we have here in the room. It's so good to have all of you, and the work that you're doing for the planet is amazing. And now back to your question. You highlighted how the transition to renewable energy is quite a critical climate solution, and how, often women are underrepresented in decision-making roles in the energy sector, and what needs to change to ensure that the women, lead in shaping Africa's energy future. It's quite an interesting question, which made me think of something that I came across sometime last week, where this lady posed a question and she says, when was the last time you were in a room full of women? But this is where it gets interesting. She says, when was the last time you were in a room full of women, other than with your friends, or in the waiting room of a gynecologist? Long, then that means that something is right in the world, But if not, then that means that we have a lot of work that we need to do, because honestly, we cannot solve a global crisis while we're excluding, the most of the world from the conversation. Women and girls are, as you rightfully put it, are disproportionately, impacted by energy poverty. In decision-making, as well as, in the design and delivery of energy solutions. I saw a 2024 study which really highlighted how, women represent only 32% of the renewable energy, workforce. Despite women really being on the front lines of, of the sustainable energy transition, we only have 32%. In the workforce. So the gender gap really in the energy sector means that women's perspectives, women's needs and experiences are often overlooked in the development of energy policies, and also the technologies. So closing this gender gap is really important, and it's going to ensure that, we have an equal participation of women, which is really crucial to the sustainable and, that equitable energy transition that we need. So what I'm really saying in a nutshell is that it's important to create an ecosystem that supports women at every level, from education to leadership roles. And, by really fostering these equal opportunities and addressing the gender biases and building a supportive, network, we can ensure that women's voices are an integral part in driving, Africa's renewable energy transition. So we're talking of things like, your increased access to education and also training, as you asked what needs to change. So we need that increased access, to education and training. We need policy support and, gender inclusive legislation. And I think we also need to encourage women entrepreneurs in energy. That's very crucial. We also need gender sensitive energy projects, But what really strikes me the most is how, we need a cultural change and also challenging these gender norms that we have. We need to shift the cultural perceptions that are there about women's roles in the workforce, and also leadership is necessary to open up, these opportunities in the energy sector. Let me hold it there for now.
Wow, we need a cultural change. You've heard Cynthia. So I'll move on to Priscilla, who's the CTO at Greenpeace International. Priscilla, technology is often seen as a tool for progress, but access and digital. I know you've also touched on this subject before on one of your previous TED Talks. So how can we ensure that African women in climate leadership have the technological tools and digital resources needed to scale their impact? You're muted, Priscilla.
I am so sorry for that. But as you can tell, based on my TED Talk, which I would try very hard not to repeat what I said in there, I felt very passionately. So there's a lot of points in there. I'll put it in the chat for anybody who wants to watch it. But I do think that expanding internet access is one of the very first things we have to do. I was hoping that TED Talk was 4 years ago now. I was hoping by now the numbers would have changed, but we still have 3 billion people who do not have access to the internet. And that is not acceptable because most of these are women, most of these are children, most of these are rural populations. The big challenge is that we're missing out on their knowledge. We're missing out a lot on what they know, what they understand, what we could learn from. And I think one of the things we have to do is each and every one of us has to understand that we have to advocate for those people to be included. Otherwise, we will not win this fight that we are in as a climate movement. But on top of expanding internet access, which mostly is in the hands of governments, in the hands of regulators, in the hands of service providers, I think we also need to understand how to provide tailored training and support to the people that would then come on board, or the people who have access to technology but don't really know how to use them. I think that's another one. The one I'm most passionate about is making sure that these technologies are context specific. Most times we get excited by technology, we jump to the big things that nobody has any use for, and we forget the very small details. There was a time in Africa where the most effective technology wasn't drones, it was SMS, because everybody, or at least the majority of people with a phone, could access an SMS. But we wanted to jump and go. We were piloting drones for healthcare delivery, and that's fine on the innovation side, but we're missing bigger opportunities with technologies that are more accessible to everybody. Things like agricultural technologies. Everyone in my village has a little field somewhere. Making sure that they can understand moisture content based on a little computer device is something that is very easy. But again, we want to send a drone that when it flies over my grandmother's village looks like witchcraft. So for me, it's really thinking about context-specific technologies at the right time and making sure that we're taking that into account. The other thing is also making sure we have partnerships and collaborations. There's a lot of things, knowledge, technologies that we can share. Dr. Chomba is from Kenya. I am from Zambia. It's a common name in both countries, so it's very confusing because I'm now based in Kenya and everybody looks at me like I'm making it up. But my point is we can find those connections, especially as Africans. These lines we have across our countries shouldn't mean as much as they do now. And I think really making sure communities and especially women are connected and collaborating would be really interesting. As I always tell people in Greenpeace, my community, I come from a very matrilineal community. We understood climate change before it had a name. We understood how to exist with our ecosystems. We understood how to do agriculture in a sustainable way. My community in particular was mostly vegan, and now somebody wants to come and teach me how to be vegan. And I'm just confused at how we lost all of this, and we keep spreading and perpetuating that the things that are coming in from outside are the things that are more important than what we understood and knew. So for me, sort of collaboration, partnerships, mentoring has been mentioned. I think that's really important. Women in technology mentoring other younger women, even older women who have the capacity to do this. Innovating, locally contextual innovation. I think those are some of the things we can do. I'll stop here because I set a time and it's gone off. So I will stop here, but I will put the TED Talk in the chat and you will understand why I'm so passionate about this.
We love a supportive panelist when it comes to time. And that was a wealth of knowledge you've just shared with us, Priscilla. Thank you. I'll move on to Nontle. Nontle, grassroots movement often start with resistance, but evolve into powerful forces for change. What have been the most effective strategies for turning your fight against land exploitation into long-term opportunities for your community?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, first of all, I know that is 2 minutes. I will try to shorten my discussion. Yeah, in Amadiba, we are facing with quite a lot of so-called mega projects. Mega projects are the one that they always grab the land away from communities. Mega projects are also problematic when it comes to the climate change, because this is the beginning of disrespecting the nature, where our communities are living and respecting the nature, because we as communities, we are connected with nature. But when there's new things that has been introduced to our communities, that's where the land exploitation you can see. For example, in our case, where they discovered the titanium, it was something that we've been told that we need to be modern. We need to be part of the modernity. Now, modernity, it comes with exploitation of land. It comes with the grabbing of our land. What strategies that we use in order to fight all these new things that have been introduced to our communities? First of all, we just use our political education. We're informing our communities. We raise awarenesses, because the communities or the people that they are not informed are easily to be misled, are easily to be given the false information. Now, when we do those kind of education, it did play a vital role to our communities to be aware and also to know what is false and what is not false. And also part of our political education is where we teach our communities to question so-called development. What is development? Because development, it's coming as a way of exploiting our land, where communities, they just surrender something that they live for long. And then they've been introduced something which is a short term, like the oil and gas, and like the titanium. Those are the things that have been introduced to our communities that is going to create jobs, is going to make them rich, which is a short term. Now, when our communities are being informed, are easily to tell our own government, because these players within our communities is our state together with the private sector, because they always like coming to inform our communities that they're going to get rich. Now, our strategies is where we're going to our communities and to inform them and to raise awarenesses and to advocacy to make sure that these communities are more in advance in terms of information. Now, who were the forefront of all this? Mostly were the women, because why women were on the forefront? When it comes to land, it's connected to us. Land is a mother, it's something that it feeds us. Now, if you want to destroy the land, you destroy the mother. There is no house without a mother. Mother is the pillar of the house. That is why the role of a woman to the climate justice are more important, because we are not just defending the land, but we are defending ourselves. Those are strategies that we put in. We know, for example, as we started the Amadiba Crisis Committee, when we started, we were many, because Amadiba Crisis Committee, it's both gender, women and men. But the more the struggle were becoming hotter, the more the struggle were becoming rough. We see that men were just changing the direction to go on other direction. And the rest right now, the majority that are defending the same land are the women, because this struggle is not the struggle of somebody else. It's where we just want to make sure that our future is not being determined by the private sector. Thank you.
Oh, that's powerful. That's powerful, Nontle. I'll go back to Jennifer. And Jennifer, your work explores the intersection of climate change and mental health. How can we better support women leaders dealing with eco-anxiety and burnout, given the weight of they're also doing in her community?
That's a very good question. And I think Notle just gave us a good example of what it's like when women carry the weight of this work. We are tired, we are stressed out, and we are burnt out. The work of climate justice is heavy. The work of climate action is deeply emotional, especially when you see the linkages. It's not just about the future. When I started learning about sustainability, we talk a lot about the future, but it's now, particularly us for Africa, in Africa, it's now. These problems are now. We're experiencing them in our communities, in our daily life. For those who don't know what eco-anxiety is, it's the range of emotions that we experience when we engage and think about environmental issues, whether it's anger, grief, anxiety, and all of that in the mix. And burnout is almost inevitable. If you're stressed out, if you're always angry, if you're always having to go for a protest, if you're constantly in agitation mode and you have to defend, your body's at some point going to tell you, this is too much, you need to rest. And I think women need to be supported, whatever that looks like, whatever that sounds like. Give them funding, give them opportunities to speak beyond International Women's Day and some of all these events that can be performative sometimes. Women need to lead true and true, and not just leading for the sake of coming to speak at an event, but leading through decision making. One of the things that I'm learning as someone who started an organization is I want our female volunteers, I want our women to be at the forefront of decision making. I don't want to say that because they are women, they don't have, the intellect to think through stuff. That is a patriarchal cultural stereotype that I grew up in, that a woman should be in the kitchen, for example. She should be the one making coffee. She should be the one thinking about how to take care of people for an event, thinking about what they would eat. Who's speaking, who's providing, talking about the money. I think we should think more about what support looks like. Side by side with that, in my work and in research, we're finding that more and more women talk about not being listened to, right? When a woman actually says, these are the problems, these are the issues, they're not being listened to. We go into communities, for example, in Nigeria, and we hear people say, oh, you need a man to follow you. You need to come with a man to talk. So these are some of the issues that are very cultural. How do we begin to change those stereotypes? I think it's a first step with burnout. And I think secondly, we need to rest. All through last year, I've been advocating for rest in the poly crisis. We see what's happening, globally. There's a lot of funding cuts. So many things are driving eco-anxiety right now. Black women, African women are extremely tired. So we need to rest. We need self-care. We need to look after ourselves. And that brings us back to community. I think Priscilla talked about it really nicely. Matrilineal communities. In Africa, we knew how to do these things. We knew how to rest. We knew who needed to work for some time, who needed to rest for another time. And that's why, this work is a marathon and not a sprint. And in a marathon, you don't need to always keep going full sprint. But if we can recognize that in the climate action movement, that we need rest, we need to find ways to build solidarity. And this is really important. Just because I don't have all of the funding doesn't mean that I shouldn't be at the forefront of making decisions. We can work side by side because we're all impacted one way or the other. So I think very importantly, sorry, my baby keeps making noise. Very importantly is the need to rest and acknowledging that these emotions are valid, building community. Communities like spaces like this where women are coming together to speak, to validate and stand in our power. This is how we accelerate action. This is how we show that we are not just, leaders of second fiddle, that we actually, the people making decisions are making a lot of change. Thank you.
Wow, powerful words. Yeah, we need rest. Over to you, Dr. Susan. You've been recognized globally for your contributions to climate action. What mindset shifts do we need in Africa to elevate more women to influential roles in the climate space?
So first of all, we need to know that solutions are not going to come from somewhere else. African solutions for what is affecting our continent are actually within us. And as I mentioned today, I've been spending brilliant time with the Alliance for Food System Sovereignty in Africa, which is one of those civil society movement that really gives me a lot of energy, because we are looking at how do you actually look at solutions that are, from the Africa, by the Africans, and basically resisting the corporate culture and resisting external influences in our food systems, in the way we govern ourselves. Because those solutions that come from external do not understand the contextual circumstances that we are all operating in. And I want to come back to Priscilla and say, I also get confused. For instance, people think I'm from Zambia, and I'm very happy that that we have those kind of connections, but also there are a lot of variations in terms of our biophysical areas that we come from, pastoralist communities in arid and semi-arid areas, intensive agricultural communities, and all of those. And for us who come from here, you understand it. It's very easy. Whereas if you look at solutions that are designed for our food systems, they are uniformity, they assume uniformity in terms of our cultural experiences, in terms of our biophysical characteristics and all of that. So one of the things that I think we must push is that Africa has to find its solutions, and we must not expect that those solutions are going to come from outside, whether it's nature, whether it's food systems, or whether it's other areas, as Priscilla mentioned, also on technology, solutions that are actually addressing smallholder needs, solutions that are addressing our youth, the rise in terms of our youth, and the knowledge, the opportunities that they present. So that's number one. I think the second one is around understanding that we can do a lot of things. And I'll give, for instance, on policy issues. Sometimes we tend not to recognize the power of engaging with our policymakers and just how much that engagement can then be able to give us homegrown solutions. Again, just emphasizing that when you look at the area that I work in, whether it's nature, biodiversity, that most of those policy elements that we are currently caught up in, and I'll give a practical example, one that I've also spoken out a lot, is around climate change and the issue around carbon markets. What does carbon markets mean for Africans? What does it mean for a rural African woman? And is that their priority when they wake up every day? And what is it that we have in terms of our complexities of land tenure systems that these carbon markets then lead to disenfranchisement of our people? And how do we engage with our policymakers who are so excited about these things because they are seeing it as a way of generating revenue that will never reach our farmers, and in a system that is going to actually accelerate climate change, because you're basically giving corporates the free pass to continue polluting in the in the pretext that they are offsetting those emissions. They're not doing everything that they can to basically remove the emissions from their own sort of system. So, and also enabling a capitalistic system that is extractive, that is leaving a lot of people behind. But we have false solutions that are coming to our continent in the name of, and I just gave one. There are so many of those. So I think my point is that we can engage both in terms of understanding that those things that are going to matter most are going to come from people who understand Africans, who understand the issues that face us, the women that understand the issues that face us, and engaging, whether it's policy making or whether it's financing mechanisms that are going to really be making change, transformative change and sustainable change.
Okay, thanks for that. Just for the interest of time, I'll go quickly to Cynthia. Drawing on your extensive experience in climate and energy advocacy, how can multi-stakeholder partnerships amongst governments, industry, and civil society create the platforms needed to empower women and to ensure that our push for renewables also delivers lasting social and economic benefits to communities?
Thanks for that, Sherie. Overall, I think we need an approach that really strikes, at the heart of what is necessary to create a really truly equitable transition to renewable can really drive, a gender inclusive, socially and economically equitable renewable energy transition by really framing the discussion around the importance of policy, the importance of capacity building, and access to finance, and also your community involvement. So there's really need for us to effectively demonstrate the multifaceted approach that is required for empowering women, and also ensuring that we have these lasting benefits for our communities. And maybe additionally, focusing on long-term sustainability and also, local ownership. It could be really key in ensuring that we have, a positive effect of renewable energy transitions. I think a good example really would be, your Women in Renewable Energy, the WIR network that is in Kenya. Those are, they're a network in Kenya that is aimed at increasing the number of women in the renewable energy sector. So this initiative really provides the training and also the networking opportunities for women, to enter the clean energy workforce, specifically in your solar, in the wind, and also other sustainable technologies. So it is in networks such as these, like the WIR that I've just mentioned. There's a lot more, but like you said, for the sake of time, I'll just mention this one. It is networks such as these ones that really highlight how a multi-stakeholder partnership can successfully empower women and bring social and economic benefits to communities through renewable energy, whether it's through direct entrepreneurial support, grassroots training, or even policy advocate. Each of these initiatives demonstrates the critical role that women can play in the transition to renewable energy. So it is the success of projects such as these ones that illustrates the importance of creating a locally tailored solution and addressing the gender-specific barriers and ensuring that women's leadership at every level of energy systems development is catered for. So these examples, or this one example that I've just given you, they offer that valuable lesson for other regions and initiatives looking to integrate gender equality into the renewable energy transitions.
Thank you, Cynthia. Over to you, Priscilla. You've worked across continents, leveraging technology for social good. Can you share a case or cases where digital innovation turned a climate challenge into an opportunity for an African community?
Yes, I'll tell you my favorite story from my entire career, and I've had over 20 years. But some years ago, over a decade ago, when I was working with UNICEF, we had a project called Unite for Climate, which was young people coming together. And so we thought, how do we make sure that when they're doing this, they're doing it in a way that's relevant to them? So what we did is we brought a group of, I think we put an ad in the newspaper saying, if you're from a government school, you can apply. We brought a group of, it was 250 young people to start, and said, we're going to train them on how to use a camera, how to conduct a radio interview, how to edit an online newspaper or magazine, how to interview somebody, how to edit a video. So we taught them very basic technology skills and then said, go into your communities and do what you will with this, as well as some climate training. And the work they did was amazing. They opened up social media pages. They had these little competitions of who's talking to the fisher women by the lakes, who's doing cleanups in their communities, who's talking about plastics. That was an amazing thing for me to witness. And to this day, some have gone into media. This was a long time ago, so now they're all grown up. Some have gone into media. I know a couple who are photographers. But the most exciting for me, where when I left UNICEF, 5 of them got together and founded a nonprofit around climate using community radio called Agents for Change. That is still going strong. And now I will address 2 questions I've seen in the chat and in the questions with the story. So Abibatu, I hope that answers part of your question on how can we turn some of this into opportunities, because they were starting to employ their friends. And they had this thing because they were all from what we like to call less privileged communities. I disagree because these kids were brilliant. But they had an agreement where we'll employ you, but 25% of your earnings have to go to your college fund, because most of them knew their parents couldn't afford. So for me, those are the opportunities you want to create by doing very simple things. And we also train them to be training each other. So the following years, UNICEF wasn't involved in the training. We would hire a venue and would identify a group that would train the next cohort of 250 people. And we created a movement that way. I will also address, I think it's David Joseph in the chat who's talking about young women not having the appetite for leadership. This organization was 3 women and 2 guys. The 3 women are still leading that organization. The guys have dropped off and gone to do other things. So there is that appetite. It's a perception I totally disagree with. So for me, that's my favorite story around how to turn some of these things into opportunities.
And she drops mic. I mean, that's a powerful story, Priscilla. I'm sure most of us are taking notes. We won't forget that anytime soon. And I'm sure it's inspired a lot of us to go and do something in the community. Nontle, over to you. You've faced immense personal risks in your activism. And especially for people in Greenpeace who are part of NVDA, you also understand this very well. And also all other activists who are with us today. Nontle, what has kept you motivated? And how can we ensure better protection and support for women leaders on the front lines of climate justice and activism?
Yeah, that's very true. As women, that we are on the forefront of the activism, we are really facing quite a lot of death threats, which is quite makes our work difficult, because each and every day where you know that you're going to be killed, it's not healthy. It gives your mind a depression. It gives you all kind of sicknesses in your body. You are not becoming normal because of all these issues. But what can people do in order to support? Because honestly, as women, these death threats are not just empty death threats. We've seen women are being murdered. We've seen in KwaZulu-Natal where Mamunjanga say, where there's mine, she was being assassinated, and the others, you know, it's not something small. And also when we've been threatened, it's not only assassination, and also on social media, you know, we are not free anymore. We cyberbully every time when you've been visible on social media. You've always been attacked every time. Now, what cause of many women being killed, and not because there are many women that they are being assassinated, they are being killed, but they are not visible. It's because there is many issues that we are facing on the ground as women and are not being known. And the only women that are known that are being assassinated, because the most cruel is so-called extractivism. Extractivism is very cruel when it comes to our communities, because they've just find women there as a forefront. Now they just see women as a stumbling block of the development. That is why we've always been targeted. Now, the support that we want to see is where also I know that we've been also offered to be relocated. We've been offered for bodyguards, the securities, but all that is important, but it's not enough. In order to meet the target, we need more the stories that is being exposed. We need more the people that are doing the research. They are going to our communities and get the story. Those stories are not being told. Those stories are being there on the ground. It will help more the deaths or the killing of women if all the stories is being out. That's my only advice, because otherwise, for example, in our case, the only stories that is being known is the Shell case, but there are other stories like the N2 road, where it's also been built through our villages, where also we said that this road you built through our village, you didn't consider our livelihood, which is going to be destroyed by your only project. And also to argue those kind, because our government, they never think that women, when it comes to development, they have a say. That is where we're becoming a threat of our own government. Now, if we can be supported in those kind of stories, like I don't think anybody knows that there is a very intense situation in our community, where our communities are going to be relocated, where our livelihood is going to be affected. But people, they know only one thing, which is oil and gas, because it was more in court and on TV. But there are other issues that are not in court, but are part and parcel of our communities being assassinated. That is why I just call upon that the support that we need is to get more media active, is to get more researchers being active, to go to these communities that are not accessible, because this is where the most assassination is being taking place. And mostly also women are too scared, are not too scared actually, are too protective of also their children. Because when I speak out, what about my children? Because my children are going to be becoming of the struggle that I'm doing. But we need a strategy, how we can also to get the information from those women. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nontle. And for all the storytellers in the room, I think you've had the very strong call to action by Nontle. They need their stories told. And that brings us to the end of our panel. So I will just direct some questions that have been coming on from our participants to the panel, including you, Uli. We have a question for you as well, but I will start with a question that's directed to Jennifer. And this is from Abibatu Sir. So the question is, as a youth leader, Jennifer, and founder of Sasti Vibes, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What advice would you give to a woman who's being marginalized within her organization, where the founder only wants her to mobilize and not lead, despite her capabilities? How can she effectively advocate for herself and create opportunities for leadership within the organization?
Thank you. That is such a tough question, but also very relatable, right? Because I see some of the co-panelists nodding. I think a lot of times these things happen to women. First of all, it sounds to me like this person knows her value, which oftentimes we don't see. We find women being marginalized, but not knowing that they're marginalized in the first place. And so if you know your value, you have options to grow and to leave, this organization. But if that's not possible and that's not the case, I think making and finding opportunities to assert yourself and to lead whatever little formats that can come in. It can start with co-chairing meetings, volunteering to do things within the organization. And so you see different people noticing you. Actually, I have an example. I did work one time and I had that sort of boss, which was very difficult, with me. I think what I eventually did was send a really nice email to HR, and I told them everything I had done in my role. I did things that I was not necessarily paid for. I digitalized all our emails. I looked for ways that we could have sustainable procurements done. And by the time I shared it with HR, they moved me to another department. Now, I know the context might be different, but I think we can be creative, find ways to make change in those small pockets of action and lead with it, from time to time. And I think also advocating for yourself respectfully, asking for time and meetings, 30 minutes, 15 minutes. I like to tell you some of the things that are bugging me. And I think that when you hear this, you can hear some of my ideas, to push these organizations forward. I think founders, I'm a founder myself. Every founder wants to hear some idea that would help, push the organization forward. So when you bring those ideas forward, if you meet this founder in the middle and they see that supporting you, giving you opportunities to lead is a win-win also for their own agenda. So those are some ideas that I can think top of my head, but I encourage this person to not give up. The times are very difficult, so we have to find ways to, be creative and to push. This is the culture and this is everything that we're up against, but we won't, fail and we won't deter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that response, Jennifer. I'll move over to a question that has been directed to Dr. Uli. And the question says, the observation that I'm currently making with regard to change in Africa is that this mainly focused on young people, generally 18 to 35, which from my point of view constitutes a major shortcoming in the design of these strategies to combat climate change in Africa. Given that this should take into account young people, children, the elderly, indigenous populations, and therefore women, how does Greenpeace Africa intend to remedy this situation? I guess that the person who's asking is wondering, why do we box it to just 18 to 35? What about the rest?
Yes, and it's a great question. And as someone who's been working with the youth and women, particularly throughout my career for the past 23 years, I can tell you that there is a reason for it. There's been a lot of back and forth, especially at the AU level, where countries wanted to define the age bracket for what we call the youth. Some countries it's 16 to 35, some countries it's 18 to 35. But this is really an issue that we need to see it in a positive light, because we're talking about Africa being the youngest continent, right? We're talking about harnessing the demographic dividend through, investing in the youth. And if you're talking about the youth, you're talking about women also, because they make up the, half of the population, whether it's youth or younger or middle-aged people like myself. So the specific issue that we're tackling when we put people in a bracket, age bracket, is really just to target these people specifically, whether women or men. But that doesn't mean that the other age groups are excluded. I think we need to look at it in a wider perspective. If you look at Africa, the challenges we have right now, for me, we have three main barriers. You have food, you have energy, and you have infrastructure. Those three things combined address every single thing that we're facing in terms of development or sustainable development. So it's not just about the age bracket, but look at it more in a overview of countering all of the challenges that we have, but with specific age groups that we need to bring up to a level of expertise, a level of where we want these people to be so that they can lead, not forgetting the other age groups. So at Greenpeace Africa, what we're doing is that we are not just focusing on a specific age group. We have what we call the Greenpeace Africa Continental Youth strategy that we have recently developed. So although it cuts at, I would say, 35, we still do work with women who are, above that age in communities, especially in the finding of solutions in the renewable energy. So that's the response I would give to that person. Thank you.
Yes, it's not limited, but of course, we're really trying to empower the leaders of tomorrow. So I'll just go into the question directed to Cynthia by Mary. And Mary is asking, as a climate activist, how positions, and what advice would you give to women facing similar challenges? A second question that's related to that also, she's asking, how can women effectively communicate their desire for leadership opportunities to founders or leaders who may be resistant to change, which is also closely related to the question that was directed to Jennifer. Cynthia?
Thank you, Sherie, and thank you for that question. I think in my first introduction, I spoke about how we need to challenge the gender norms, the cultural issues of cultural change, and also challenging, the gender norms, where we really need to shift that cultural perception about women's roles in the workforce, and also that, leadership are really aimed at reducing, that are aimed at reducing the gender stereotypes and also encouraging women, to take the leadership roles. This is really crucial, for long-term change. I know and I understand that navigating, a male-dominated leadership in an organization, focused maybe on women's empowerment is quite challenging, but it is evident that with strategic advocacy, with fostering partnerships and really taking concrete actions, it's possible. It's possible. And I say it again, it's possible to drive, systemic change. So we really need to start by creating these pathways for women's leadership development, ensuring that there's this transparent and accountable process, and also engaging the male leaders that we're talking about. Let's engage them as allies, equitable spaces where women are empowered to take on leadership roles. But remember, we need to engage the male leaders as well as our allies. Men are not our enemies. Over.
Oh, thank you for that response, Cynthia. Priscilla, do you have something you can add to Cynthia's response to this? Especially, the question is more about how can women effectively communicate their desire for leadership opportunities to founders or leaders who may be resistant to change?
Oh my goodness, that's a big question, but I think Cynthia covered most of it. But also, I think it's also about making sure that you're telling your story. I think we've had conversations as Africans, we're very good at telling your stories. So it's not necessarily, in addition to what Cynthia has said, it's also a lot about how am I projecting myself externally, because it's not always internally that matters. I think one of the panelists mentioned that sometimes you want to get out of the organization. But sometimes you also want to make sure whoever your line manager is understands the value that you're doing. I had once a boss and I used to say, I understand what my job is. My job is to make you look good. And that was what I did. And once they understood that we were on the same team and everything I was delivering went back up to them and they could sit in front of the board and say, we've done this in tech and we've done that in tech, I think our relationship improved. So sometimes it's understanding how to play the game. And I'm very candid about this. You know you're progressing yourself, but you also know you're making sure that the people that you need to be supporting are feeling supported. And as Cynthia said, we're not in a competition. This is not about enemies. This is about how do we get to where we need to get to together. And I have many stories, but I will leave it at that. But also being adaptable and changing according to the environment and what you need to do.
Wow, those are some very powerful words. I think, yeah, you ladies are just blowing my mind today. I will direct this question to Susan, yeah? And Susan, how can women in climate leadership ensure that African-led climate solutions are not just heard, but they're actually implemented at the policy level?
You should have told me the policy question was coming.
Oh, you'd relaxed?
Yeah. No,
I told you to put a on this.
yeah. Thanks, Sherie. Policy-making processes are some of the most complex arenas. In fact, I think there's a famous author who said, policy-making is, it's like the way sausages are made. You don't want to be in the kitchen. You don't want to understand what happens, but when you see the sausage, sorry for vegetarians, and for those who love sausages, you don't want to understand what happens and what's put in that sausage. But at the end of the day, there's a sausage for people to eat. And so that is a very important place for us to understand the politics around it, and that we have to be in that space. And I know you've asked how we move from policy to actually implementation, but I want to say even the policy making processes, these are power spaces, and whatever policy we want to see as an outcome requires a lot of negotiation, a lot of navigation, a lot of tactics. That is very, very important in itself. And a lot of times you find that maybe, institutions or actors with interest and money win in terms of the policies that they want to see, as opposed to, for instance, the communities that we serve. They don't get the voice at the table. But assuming that we navigate that policy-making processes and we get the policy that we want, we get a policy around, shifting mainstream gender in climate change, or in how do you actually get it implemented? I think we have to follow that process with investing our resources, whether it's money, whether it's technology, in the right places and in the right people. We have so many policies on this continent. Our challenges are not the policy processes themselves. It's actually getting things implemented on the ground. And that's because we don't follow it with money. That's why, yesterday, the place that I was in, asking people, what if, money grew on trees? Can we direct resources to communities, to women groups who are actually actioning on the ground? And therefore, you can be able to see translation of policies to action. So there's a lot that can be done, but I like to say, follow the money, follow the space where people, put your money where your mouth is. So, and it's very important that we enable those actors to be able to see implementation happening on the ground.
Okay, great. Thanks, Susan. So this question is directed to Notley by Mary. And she's asking, how do you think women can build resilience and maintain their commitment to leadership, especially in the face of adversity?
I think communities can build resilience. For communities to do that, especially women, is where they were given supported, and they were supported by information, because all what women they need is information. But for women, if they don't have information, it's quite difficult to fight the struggle. Like, for example, those kind of advocacy, kind of education that we play within our communities, especially to organize women, the women to know that what are their rights, the rights of women, because there are cultures also that are becoming a stigma to our resistance, where as women we've been told that you shouldn't be there as a woman. That thing is for it's men standing, that if we crush that, we just destroy that, because women can be everywhere. It's not only that they should be in the kitchen. And I always argue that, yes, women can be in the kitchen, but without having land, there's no kitchen. You need a land in order to have a kitchen. Now, that is why women, they're outside there to defend the land. And when we talk about land, we are not just talking about just soil. We're talking about the whole nature. That is how we define the land in our communities. It's just a package. But mostly people that when they talk about land, they just speak about only the soil. But when we talk about the land, we talk about water, we talk about trees, everything that is sitting there, it's been held by land. That is why I said that the resistance is possible, But all what is needed is to just empower women, to make sure that women can stand for themselves. Women can lead in these struggles and cannot be pulled down because they are the women. And if we have that, we give more the women the opportunity, we give more women the information, the resistance will build. Because I've learned one thing, women are not changing their minds. If they know this is wrong, it will be wrong. They never been misled by money. Money is the last thing in the minds of women. What is the first thing is to feed the household. That's in the mind of a woman, because you want to build the future. It's not about getting money. It's about make sure that your house is warm. Your house have peace, because that's what women they want. They want to see peace in our household. But the climate crisis that we are facing, it destroyed that peace. That peace, it's always been destroyed, because when we are facing with a heat wave, it means that there will be less food. When we face with floods, because these two things during this climate crisis are coming hand to hand, both at the same time. You can't say that we are affected by the heat wave. It's heat wave and the rain at the same time. Those are the things that are challenging women. And if women are being supported in terms of information, because as the other speaker mentioned, that as women, we know how to mitigate this climate crisis. But it's unfortunately our indigenous knowledge as well, when we talk about the climate crisis, it's not been there as something that can be added in order to fight the climate crisis. It's always like the best way to mitigate the climate crisis is always coming from, I can say, from the West. Like there was no crisis before. People in our communities right now, they know which crop that we can grow. But also the other resilience that we need to do is food sovereignty to our communities. When communities, they have food, they can resist. When communities, they have some alternative, they can stand without shake. But when communities, they don't have alternative, they can't sustain themselves. Sustainability is the most powerful tool for resilient. Sustainability is the way to strengthen our communities, that they cannot be shamed, because when they have naked, they have nothing, because food is a clothes. That's how we define food. Food is something that it covers your dignity. But when you don't have food, you are dignitiless. And everybody is taking advantage of women because of they don't have food. That is why we promote a permanent agriculture, that our communities must be supported on that, and our livelihood not to be destroyed in order to promote the national interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Notle. And we are almost coming to the end, and I have a question for Priscilla. Priscilla, many young women in tech, they face challenges breaking into leadership spaces. You know, tech is a very male-dominated field. As a woman leading digital transformation at a global level, what advice would you give to those who are looking to use tech for climate justice, or come into the tech world but aligned to climate justice?
Okay, I'll try and be quick, but you're right. And when I started, I was alone in a room full of men whenever I went to a conference. Unfortunately, 20-something years later, that hasn't changed very much. I'll tell a quick story and then go into what I think women should do, especially young women trying to get into leadership positions. I was working for the UN. I joined the World Food Program when I was 19. I was a tiny little person. This is me having gained weight and much bigger. And I got sent to the Namibia office I think I was 20 at the time, to go and set up the entire office. And I arrive, and the senior person from regional office looks at me and says, "Who are you?" I'm like, "I've come set up the office. The technology systems is brand new. There's nothing, no wires, no cables, nothing." And he says, "But we asked for an engineer." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "I don't think you can do the job." And I was like, "Okay, I'm here for 10 days. If by day 5 you still think I can't do the job, you can send me home, put me on a plane home." And I worked. And by day 5, I was done and training the driver in the office to do the maintenance of the work, because it was a small office. So to that point, what people need to do. It was, oh, and I went back to his office. I knocked and I said, do you still think I can't do the job? I need to get my flight out if that's the case. So one of the things that I think young women have to do is you have to keep learning. You have to demonstrate your expertise. You have to understand the things you're doing. Technology is rapidly evolving, so you have to keep pace. There was a question in the chat about, will people become jobless with technological advancements? I disagree. When I started working, I was pulling cables, I was fixing people's printers. Technology evolved and I evolved. So you have to keep evolving. You have to stay relevant. They had to create a brand new position that didn't exist in UNICEF called Innovation Lead, because I was solving problems that were not even in anybody's mind using technology. So it's understanding what's the unique value proposition that I'm bringing. You being young, you being African, you being a woman, that already is a unique perspective that nobody else has. Even now, I'm no longer young, but I still qualify for the other two, the African and the woman. Making sure that you are using your unique perspective to demonstrate that you're different from everybody else in the room will really get you places. Keeping an eye out for imposter syndrome, because I think that's something that really brings a lot of us down. I have to beg women on my team to apply for roles sometimes because it's like, but I don't check this one thing. I'm like, I once had a fisherman from Sweden or Norway applying to be digital transformation lead, and his only experience was being a fisherman. Why are you, who's worked in this space, second guessing yourself? So really thinking through, understanding your stuff, being confident in it, putting imposter syndrome aside when it arises, and really making sure you're telling your story, like I said, writing blogs on LinkedIn, putting out videos, taking opportunities to speak at events such as this one. I think there's a lot, but again, because of time, I will stop there. But I have many years of experience. If anybody wants a side chat, let me know.
Oh, don't be surprised when your inbox is flooding, Priscilla. Yeah, your inbox will be flooding now that you've asked us to come and see you there. So this brings us to the end of this Q&A session, and I just want to thank everybody who's sent in all the engaging questions. And our panel, thank you so much for handling them with so much grace and with so much information. Just thank you. It's been such an engaging session and we've learned so much. So as we come to the end of this inspiring evening, I'd like to recap just some key takeaways from our discussion. We've heard firsthand how women's leadership is really turning climate challenges into opportunities through innovation. We've heard about resilience. We've heard about transformative policy, and you know, all the transformative policies that we need. The collective insights that have been shared also by our keynote speaker, that's our ED, Dr. Uli Keita, and the panelists have really reaffirmed that, you know, accelerating action is not only necessary, it's really within our reach when we work together. You've seen this incredible panelists doing it, and I believe we're all doing it in our own spaces. So thank you to our speakers and panelists and to all of you for joining us tonight. But before you go, we have a poll that we'd like you to answer. Before you leave us, there's a poll we'd like you to answer. It's just going to show up on your screen in the next few seconds. Yes, please, we'd love to take your feedback. Let us know how you found the session. The first question is, overall, how would you rate your experience with today's webinar? 0 being very satisfied, 5 being dissatisfied. So please note that 0, very satisfied, 5 is dissatisfied. The second question is, which aspect of the webinar did you find most impactful or valuable? This is a single choice question, so just answer one. Which aspect of the webinar did you find most impactful or valuable? The third question, would you be interested in attending future webinars focused on climate issues on the continent hosted by Greenpeace Africa? I believe we've done a good job. 0 is not likely, 5 is extremely likely. Yeah, so just remember is itself that has popped up on your screen. you just a minute for those who are yet to do it, just a few more seconds for those who are yet to do it, giving you a chance to do that. But really, we want to say a big, big thank you to all of you. Your feedback is very, very valuable to us. Thank you for spending this time with us. We don't take it for granted, and we hope that we will have this kind of interactions more and more. We started the year strong, and we hope to keep it this way. I have been your host. My name is Sherie Gaki. And please, before we close, please remember to support our ongoing campaigns and initiatives at Greenpeace Africa. We want to continue accelerating action together and creating meaningful change. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful evening.